I still remember the sound of the rain hitting the umbrellas that morning, and the way the air felt heavy, like it already knew what I was about to hear. I wasn't even supposed to be at that funeral. I didn't know the family, I didn't recognize any of the faces, and honestly, I was planning to slip out before anyone noticed me. But then, he appeared. A man I had never seen before. No introduction, no hesitation. He stepped right into my path, leaned close enough that I could see the trembling in his jaw, and whispered, "Robin, I've been waiting for you." My breath caught in my throat. His eyes were filled with something I couldn't name, fear, regret, maybe both, and in that single moment, I knew my life was about to crack open in ways I wasn't ready for, because no stranger whispers something like that unless they carry a truth meant to break you. And that was the moment everything shifted, long before I understood why he chose me, or what he believed I'd forgotten. Nobody ever expects their life to shift in a single heartbeat, but the moment that young boy's cold fingers wrapped around my wrist as I tried to pull him back from the edge of that collapsing bridge, and he looked straight into my eyes, shaking, breathless, terrified, and whispered, "Robin, I've been waiting for you." I knew something had entered my life that I hadn't prepared for, something that felt less like chance and more like destiny knocking on a door I'd forgotten existed. It was late afternoon, the kind of soft fading light that drapes itself over the world like an old memory, and I had been walking along the riverside trail the same way I had every Wednesday for years, tracing the river the way my thoughts traced everything I never said out loud, when I heard a noise, something sharp, metallic, followed by a cry so faint I almost convinced myself I imagined it. But when I rounded the bend and saw the old wooden footbridge half collapsed from the storm the night before, and a boy clinging desperately to the last intact beam, his feet sliding as the river roared beneath him, I didn't think. My legs moved before my mind caught up. I ran. I reached him just as his grip slipped, and the moment our hands locked, he looked at me not like a stranger, not like someone praying I wouldn't let go, but like someone who already knew me, someone who had known me for years, and that more than anything froze the breath in my chest. His name, I would learn a few minutes later, was Eli Turner, 19 years old, though the way his voice trembled made him feel younger, like someone life had pushed too hard, too early. When I finally dragged him onto solid ground, he didn't collapse into my arms like most people do after being pulled from the edge. Instead, he sat up slowly, wiped the water from his face, and just stared at me, his wide gray eyes reflecting something I didn't understand. "You're Robin," he said again, like confirming it for himself. "Robin Williams." I gave a small nod, still trying to catch my breath. "How do you?" But he cut me off with a small, pained smile that didn't belong on someone his age. "I told you, I've been waiting." His words carried a weight far too heavy for a night, a weight I recognized, the weight of secrets, of years that shaped a soul before it was ready, of loss you don't talk about because the world never asks the right questions. Before I could ask what he meant, his legs buckled beneath him and he tilted forward. I caught him just before his head hit the ground and felt the tremor in his body, the kind that doesn't come from cold but from exhaustion layered with fear. "Easy," I whispered, guiding him toward a fallen log so he could sit. The river roared behind us, the late winter wind slicing through the trees. I took off my coat and wrapped it around him. He didn't protest. He didn't thank me. He just kept his eyes on me like he was afraid I'd disappear if he blinked. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a breath. "I knew you'd find me," he said. "I knew you'd come today." A chill ran up my spine. "Eli, we've never met." He shook his head slowly. "Not like this." Those 3 words, "not like this," felt like a hand reaching back through time, brushing against something I'd buried. I tried to steady my voice. "What happened to you?" For a moment he didn't answer. His gaze drifted toward the river, as if the water held the version of his story he couldn't bring himself to say out loud. "They took everything," he finally whispered, "and when they were done, they came for me." I leaned slightly forward. "Who?" He swallowed hard. "People who shouldn't know your name." My pulse stumbled. "My name," he nodded. "They said you'd understand. They said if I survived long enough to find you, you'd know what to do." I felt my breath catch again. A stranger pointing me out, sending this boy to me. It didn't make sense. "Eli, why would anyone tell you to find me?" His eyes returned to mine, soft, wounded, ancient with fear. "Because you're the only one left," he said. "The only one who can finish what he started." A tightness squeezed my chest. "Who?" "He didn't tell me his name," Eli said. "But he said you'd know him." The wind rustled through the dead leaves, scattering them like whispers. "Eli," I said carefully, "I don't know who you're talking about. I don't know anyone who—" He shook his head again, more firmly this time. "Yes, you do." There was no fear in his voice when he said it, just certainty, like he was stating the color of the sky. He reached slowly into his backpack, wincing from a pain I hadn't noticed yet, and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The edges were torn, the center creased from being opened too many times. He placed it in my hands with trembling fingers. He said to give you this, and that when you saw it, you'd remember. I unfolded it and immediately felt my heart lurch. It was a photograph, a very old one, blurry around the edges, colors faded, corners soft with age. That it was a picture of me, 40 years younger, standing in a small classroom with sunlight cutting across my face. Behind me was a group of neighborhood kids from a volunteer program I ran for a few years. Kids I taught after school, kids who came from homes colder and louder than they deserved. But at the edge of the photo, half hidden by a desk, was a boy I barely remembered. A boy with gray eyes. A boy whose name I never learned. A boy who used to sit apart from the others, always quiet, always watching. A boy whose face, now that I saw it again, matched the same haunted shape that looked back at me through Eli's 19-year-old eyes. My stomach twisted. Eli, I said slowly, do you know who that boy is? He nodded once. He's the one who told me to find you. My pulse hammered. That's impossible. He would be nearly 50 by now. He is, Eli said softly, but he said he couldn't come himself. Not yet. He said it wasn't safe for him. Or for you. I stared at the photo again, my mind spinning. I remembered the boy vaguely quiet, thin, always flinching at loud noises. He never talked about his home, but he always waited until everyone else left before packing his things. I used to walk him to the door, making sure he got to the street safely. And then one day he vanished. Just stopped showing up. No record, no warning, no goodbye. I asked around. Nobody knew him. It was like he never existed. And now, a 19-year-old kid who nearly died on a broken bridge was telling me that boy was alive, watching, protecting, sending messages. My voice was barely a whisper. Eli, why were you on that bridge? He hesitated, and then, quietly, because someone pushed me. The air around us froze. I felt the world narrowed to a tight, terrifying point. Pushed you? He nodded. One of the men who's been following me. They said if I didn't tell them where the photograph was, they'd make sure the river took care of the rest. I felt a cold anger rise inside me, an old anger, one I thought age had smoothed away. And the boy from the photo, he's connected to this. Eli nodded. He told me you once saved his life too. My breath caught. What do you mean too? But Eli didn't answer. Instead he leaned forward slightly, wincing as he pressed a hand to his ribs. I noticed the bruise blooming beneath his shirt, dark and ugly. We need to go, he whispered. They'll look for us. They don't give up. Where are we supposed to go? He lifted his eyes to mine, something like hope flickering behind the fear. To the only place he said you'd remember. I frowned. Where? Eli gave a tiny nod toward the river, then toward the path that led deeper into the woods. He said you'd know when you saw the bridge. The bridge. The old one, the one that collapsed today, the one that shouldn't have still been standing, the one I hadn't walked across in more than 30 years, the one only 2 people ever knew the truth about. My stomach dropped. I do know, I whispered. Eli exhaled shakily, like he'd been holding his breath for years. I told you, he said softly. I've been waiting for you. I didn't know what he meant. Not fully. Not yet. But as we stood, and I wrapped my coat tighter around his shaking shoulders, something inside me shifted the way a locked door shifts when the right key is slipped into its old, rusted lock. Whatever this was, whatever had begun today, wasn't an accident, and the boy from the photograph, the one who vanished and somehow knew I'd save Eli today, wasn't done with me. Not even close. I didn't know how long we walked along that winding riverside trail. Eli hunched inside my coat as though trying to make himself smaller. The sky dimming into a bruised gray that promised rain, or maybe snow, or maybe something heavier than weather. But every time my mind tried to slow down, tried to grab onto a single thought long enough to understand any of this, Eli would glance up at me with those gray eyes filled with something too old for 19 and whisper, "We have to keep moving." Robin, like he knew exactly what was coming and how close it was. And I followed because part of me, a part I hadn't listened to in years, believed him. The river churned violently beside us, swollen from the storm. The collapsed bridge behind us now, nothing more than a broken rib jutting from the earth. But the path ahead was familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. Moss-covered stones, low branches that always forced you to duck, the faint scent of cedar carried through the wind. I hadn't walked this trail since I was about Eli's age myself. Back when I used to bring the neighborhood kids here to explore, to laugh, to escape whatever loud homes or quiet sadness waited for them at night. And that memory, that small flicker of warmth, was enough to force a question out of me. A question I'd been trying to avoid since Eli showed me the old photograph. Eli, I said, my voice hoarse from cold and fear. The boy in the picture. How does he know me? Eli tightened my coat around his shoulders, his steps faltering for a moment before he steadied himself. He said you saved his life once, he murmured. He never forgot. I shook my head, my breath coming out in heavy clouds. I don't remember saving anyone. Eli gave a small, sad smile. Some moments save people, even if you don't realize it. The weight of that stayed with me for several steps. We reached a fork in the trailer path I didn't recognize, and one I did. Eli pointed to the right, toward the deeper woods. This way. I hesitated. Eli, the bridge collapsed. If he wanted us to meet him there, Eli shook his head sharply. He didn't say on the bridge. He said near it. Somewhere you'd remember that word again. I swallowed the tightness in my throat. The wind picked up, and somewhere in its howl I thought I heard something else. Footsteps. Voices, distant but closing. Eli heard it too. He flinched, his body going rigid like a hunted animal's. They found the bridge, he whispered. We need to move faster. I didn't argue. I took his arm gently and guided him down the right-hand trail, branches snapping under our feet. The forest grew darker, trees crowding overhead until the sky was nothing more than a faint watercolor smudge. My breath turned sharp in my chest, each inhale scraping at something raw inside me. Somewhere behind us, the voices grew louder, angry, urgent, sprinting. Eli's grip tightened painfully on my sleeve. Don't let go, he gasped. Please don't let go. I'm not going anywhere, I promised, though I wasn't sure I believed myself. The trail eventually opened into a small clearing, a place I knew instantly, despite not seeing it in decades. The old stone fire pit in the center now collapsed, the half-circle of logs that served as seats, rotting, and, in the far corner, the remnants of a wooden sign that once read Ridgewood Nature Group, a program I ran the summer I turned 21. That summer had been the last time I felt like I knew who I was. That summer had been the last time the world felt uncomplicated. And in that same summer, just a week before the program ended, the quiet boy with the gray eyes had vanished. He told me you'd remember this place, Eli whispered. He said this was where it started. My legs felt weak as I stepped into the clearing. Eli, what started? He looked at me with a mixture of fear and pity. Your connection, the thing you two share, the reason he trusted you with me. Before I could ask what that meant, Eli winced and gripped his ribs. I knelt beside him. You're hurt worse than you said. He nodded but waved me off. I'll be okay. We just have to wait. Wait for who? Him, Eli said simply, but the way he said it made my skin crawl. Like him wasn't just a person, it was a force, a shadow stretching across time. He said he'd find us once we got here. My pulse quickened. How does he know where we are? Eli's voice trembled. He's always known. That didn't comfort me. Minutes passed. The woods around us seemed to inhale and exhale with the wind, branches creaking like bones shifting. Eli's breathing grew shallow, but he never took his eyes off the trail behind us. He said you'd stand by the fire pit, Eli whispered. And he'd stand in the place where the sunlight hits the clearing. I frowned. There is no sunlight, Eli swallowed. Just wait. And then, softly, quietly, impossibly, the clouds parted for just a moment, and a single thin beam of late afternoon light trickled through the trees, landing on a small patch of moss across the clearing. And in that beam of light, a figure stood. My breath hitched. Eli's hand clamped onto my arm. That's him, he whispered, voice cracking. That's the boy from the photo. But it wasn't a boy. It was a man mid-40s, maybe older, his face half hidden by the shadow of his hood, his posture still tense, as if carved from the forest itself. When he stepped forward, the light caught his eyes. Gray, the same gray as Eli's. My heart clattered inside my chest. It can't be, I whispered. But Eli nodded. It is. The man stopped several feet away, lifting his hand slightly to show he wasn't a threat. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low and rough, like it had scraped against too many years of silence. Robin, he said, you kept your promise. Promise? I echoed. What promise? He tilted his head. You don't remember. Remember what? A long silence. The night I left, he said softly, you told me if I ever needed help, if I ever found someone worth saving, I should bring them to you. My stomach twisted. I never. You did, he interrupted gently. I was 11. You were the only safe place I had. I blinked hard as faint pieces of memory fragments pulsed behind my eyes. A scared boy, a whisper, a door closing, a tear-stained face saying, do I ever come back? And my younger voice saying, if you ever need me. Yes. My throat tightened until speaking felt impossible. You saved me once, the man said softly. And now Eli needs saving too. I glanced at Eli. His breathing was shallow, his skin pale. Who hurt him? I demanded. The man's jaw clenched. The same people who hurt me. The same people who spent years looking for you. A cold shiver crawled up my spine. Why me? I whispered. The man stepped closer, his expression a haunting mix of gratitude and sorrow. Because you knew the truth before anyone else. You just forgot what? He hesitated, and then said the sentence that broke everything open. Eli is my son. My breath stopped. The world blurred. He what? The man nodded once. They came after me. They always do. But I couldn't let them take him. I sent him to you. Because you saved me when no one else would. I looked at Eli, really looked at him, and suddenly saw the pieces, the same gray eyes, the same thin, tense posture, the same haunted way of watching the world as if waiting for it to snap. Why are they after him? I whispered. The man took a slow breath. Because he saw something he shouldn't have. Something I saw when I was a boy. Something that ties to the same people who came after you all those years ago. My pulse pounded. Who are they? He shook his head. Dangerous, patient, they don't forget. But I don't know anything. You did, he said quietly. When I ran away that night, you followed me into the woods. You saw the men who came to the cabin. You saw what they did. But someone made you forget. Someone who wanted to protect you. Protect me from what? The man stepped closer. Robin, the night I disappeared, you weren't supposed to survive. Eli reached out, grabbing my hand weakly. Please, he whispered. Take us with you. My voice shook. Where? Somewhere safe, the man said. Somewhere they won't look. Where is that? The man looked toward the river. Not a place, he murmured. A person. I frowned. Who? The only person they're afraid of. A long silence followed. The wind howled through the clearing. And then, the man spoke the final sentence, one that turned everything inside out. Your brother. I stumbled backward. My brother? The man nodded. He didn't die, Robin. He's the one who protected you that night. He's the one who made you forget. And he's the only one who can protect Eli now. My knees nearly buckled. Tears burned behind my eyes. He's alive. Yes, the man whispered. He never stopped watching over you. Before I could say another word, before I could process the impossible truths, shouts erupted behind us. Footsteps. Flashlights slicing through the forest. They had found us. Eli clung to me. The man grabbed my arm. It's time to go. Now. And as we ran into the darkness, branches whipping against our faces, snow beginning to fall in frantic spirals, one truth thundered through my chest, louder than the men chasing us. The past wasn't done with me, and neither was fate.